Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna, 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 Krishna.
Welcome for today's session. We'll start with our prayers and then I'll share my screen here. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine. जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि श्री गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. So thanks everybody for joining today. Somehow because of various reasons we couldn't have session last week. So before that week we actually covered this chapter 7 and I would like to have a very quick summary about what we discussed last time. So Krishna actually talks of quite a few concepts because starting from this particular chapter, Bhakti Yoga part of Bhagavad Gita starts. And Krishna in initial chapter also, he gives quite interesting concepts. So he speaks about how to understand his presence in everything surrounding us. So we discussed about this particular example where Krishna talks about the pearl of this string of pearls and he's like a thread. So something which is not visible but without which this necklace will not exist. The pearls will get shattered. So trying to develop this particular vision, Krishna also explains about his material and that is inferior as well as spiritual which is superior energy. And then Krishna gives multiple examples to understand his presence in everything, like his a taste of water, his fragrance of earth, his intelligence in all the intelligent beings, and his the strength of everyone. We also discussed about this procreation energy and how to use that in the right manner. Then Krishna also speaks about various modes of material nature, and he tells that this world is designed in such a way that it's difficult. One may get very much bewildered, but one who is surrendered to Krishna, for him it's very easy. And then Krishna moves on to explain there are four types of people who do surrender and four types of people who do not want to surrender. So Krishna talks about this atheistic or mentality where person is too much engrossed in material advancement and then material just trying to achieve something in this particular world, keeping God completely out of this picture. And then Krishna particularly talks about the people who are in lot of distress and who are looking for some higher help in their progress, and then who are genuinely seeking for some higher knowledge or who are looking forward to get questions which they are very much inquisitive to get answers for these questions. So various categories Krishna explained here. And we also know that we also discussed about the best category is the person who is inquisitive, who surrenders to proper spiritual masters, who gets all the answers, applies it, who is in full knowledge, and with that knowledge, he applies all the principles in his life and engages in pure devotional service. Then we also discussed about the cosmos, the way it is designed, particularly trying to understand where is the Brahman and all that. So while discussing cosmos, we discussed about one specific universe, and in that universe, how everything is governed under the guidance of Lord with the system of these various demigods, how demigods are empowered by the Lord to grant us various benedictions. And then Krishna moves on to explain the concept of Brahman, which is beyond all these universes. We'll discuss more about this in today's session as well. And then what is the spiritual world, how we reach to spiritual planets. And at the same time, Krishna highlights the importance of surrendering and remembering him at the time of death. So Krishna actually touches on various concepts. Specifically, this last particular section of 7th chapter, it ends with the remembering Krishna at the time of death. So I'll be sharing another screen. Just give me a minute. I'm sharing the 8th chapter. Can anybody confirm that they can see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so in this particular chapter, the Bhagavad Gita principles, Krishna actually is going to explain the previous concept, but in little more depth and with little more um, visualizations. So this is called as Akshara Brahma Yoga. That is, Akshara means something which never falls. So this knowledge is called as infallible knowledge, and that knowledge is about attaining the supreme. So the start of this particular chapter, Arjuna has multiple questions. And in initial verses, first 10 verses are actually dedicated to answer Arjuna's various questions. Because when Krishna, in the previous chapter, if you remember, seeing him everywhere and understanding him is a taste of water or fragrance of earth, and he is pervaded in entire universe, then he talks about demigod system, people who surrender and don't surrender. So Arjuna is actually thinking that this whole experience about this spiritual reality, or what you and me, we see around, what we experience, what we contemplate, how this entire faculty works. And then, because to experience something, first we need to have a facility that the things should exist, they should be in their place. Second most important is knowledge about how to make these things work. And after going through that situation, then only we get that experience. So who has arranged this entire material world, and how to get spiritual experience out of this material world? So Arjuna asks these key concepts: what is Adhyatma, Brahman, Adibhuta, Adidaiva, Adiyajna? So it's quite interesting terms actually what Arjuna is asking. Adhyatma. So Adhyatma is actually, Krishna explains, is about Jiva, the self. Then Brahman. Brahman is again, it's a indestructible, transcendental living things. So this Brahman has various connotations, and it is actually used to identify one's own self, as well as the big Brahman which is there out of this particular material world, which exists between spiritual and the material worlds. Then there is this Adibhuta. Adibhuta means, Bhuta means entire nature what we see around. So how this whole physical nature, which is constantly changing, how it comes into existence, and who governs it, that is the question. Then Adidaiva, so it's a more about this governing part, who governs this entire universe with the system of demigods, this universal form. More of this we'll discuss in chapter 11. And then next question is Adi Yajna. So in the entire previous first 6 chapters, Krishna actually talks about dedicating all our activities, our consciousness to that particular, to do for the pleasure of that supreme entity. So that Adi Yajna is actually the enjoyer of all the sacrifices. Whatever activities we perform, he is actually enjoyer. So Arjuna is asking, who is that Adi Yajna? And answer for that question is a super soul in the heart of every living being. That super soul is actually non-different from the Krishna himself, who is Supreme Lord. But then for my specific activities, what I am pleasing is this Paramatma, who is right now sitting right now next to me, eternally in my heart. So for me, I am pleasing the Supreme Lord through the agency of the super soul. So there are these various concepts which are being discussed. And if you have any specific questions on this, we can discuss more at the end. The interesting part here is Arjuna also wanted to know what is this karma. And Krishna gives very super interesting answer to this particular karma. Krishna answers that any action which is pertaining to the development of material bodies of living entities, that is you and me, is called as karma. They are fruitive activities. So development of material bodies. So that means if we are breathing, just by breathing also, we are actually accumulating karma. Even if we are not breathing, still there are so many things happening within our body in the living cells, and they are generating few things, they are destroying few things are getting changed. So karma is something, as soon as we accept this material body, the karma is, it is something which is absolutely unavoidable. Now what is in our hand is for which purpose we are performing the karma, for which purpose we are utilizing our body, our intelligence, our breathing energy and everything. So we discussed in some of the previous chapter whole cycle of karma, the reaction and then the storage into the memory and impressions and everything. But in this particular chapter, we will also understand what exactly the karma specific at the time of death, because at the time of death, the accumulation of all the impressions and on inclinations, they are actually summarized in that particular experience. So initial verses, Arjuna asks these questions and Krishna gives very interesting answers. Now, moving ahead, this particular yajna of death, as what we discussed, is a summary of the entire existence, whatever we are going through. This is very interesting concept because when I heard about it first time, it is not that randomly anybody gets any kind of births or even any destinations, because some you may see, some may be born in slums, some may be born in very good family, some by birth is very religious, some by birth is having some kind of not so good tendencies. So every living entity, whenever they are born, they are coming with some kind of baggages, and I wanted to understand how exactly it happens. And Bhagavad Gita gives a very clear cut answer for this, that our consciousness at the time of death, that decides our next body and next destination. So Krishna says very clearly, whatever state of being one remembers. Now, this is not something which we can do artificially, that now I'm going to die, or I'm going to shoot, let's say I'm committing suicide and I just remember specific thing. No, this is something which consciousness gets automatically drawn towards that thing which lifetime we are cultivating to get attracted to. All those images, all those impressions, this is something which is decided by the way we are living our life. So whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, O son of Kunti, that state he will attain without fail. So specifically, if it is natural death, or if for whatever reason, if our near and dears, they are living body, we should assist them, try as much as possible to remember the Lord, to remember the right things. Otherwise, if somebody is, most of the TV, I mean, what I had seen in ICUs, they just put the TV so that the guys who are just in the lot of pain or they have nothing to do, they are just watching some news or some matches. And this knowledge, if somebody doesn't have this knowledge, they are actually missing a lot in their life. How to focus on specific thing at the time of death, because that's what decides the next destination. And how do we prepare for that time of death? Krishna says, carry out all our prescribed duties and always think of Krishna. So as and when we are carrying out our duty, like for example, somebody is like getting married, automatically consciousness is drawn to would be spouse. If somebody is having kids, newly born kids, and he's again going to his office and doing certain works, automatically mind is drawn to what my kids are doing and what they might be speaking at this point of time. So that same attention, it's possible to divert towards Krishna as well, where we are performing our duty, at the same time we are favorably thinking of Krishna. So somehow, if we can manage at the end of this life to quit our body, remembering Krishna alone, then it is very much possible that we can return back to Godhead. And Krishna says, for this there is no doubt. Now, to do this meditation at there are various ways. I mean, of course, the devotion is one of them, Ashtanga Yoga one of them. There are different types of dhyana yoga meditations, as we discussed in one of the previous chapters, is one of them. So Krishna is actually talking about various techniques about this yoga of death. One of them is prominent is this meditation. Now there are this Ashtanga yoga. If you remember the stages, the very first is yama, niyama, that is do's and don'ts of living in this world. Then asana, various yogasanas to regulate our physical body. Yama, niyama, asana. Then pranayam, that is the regulating our breathing and the prana, which is like a subtle energy in this body. Then yama, niyama, asana, pranayam. Then there is a next four stages: pratyahara, dharana, dhyan, samadhi. So pratyahara is we are controlling our visualizations as well. Then there is a dharana, that is for some time we are able to control mind. Again, it is going somewhere. Again, we control and bring it back. And that dharana culminates into dhyanas, where we decide how long I want to continue thinking about certain thing, or I want to focus on. So dhyana is for really, really long duration, and samadhi means something which is immersed in transcendental bliss. So this process of meditation, step by step, Ashtanga Yoga, is actually uh, it is so for people who have practiced this particular yoga, various stages, particularly the latter four stages, how they quit their bodies. So persons who are learned in the Vedas, the Vedas means actually it covers various types of this Hatha Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, various processes, who utter Omkara. who are great sages in the renounced order, they enter into Brahman. So there are now, because Vedas, not everybody has this great knowledge what is written in Bhagavad Gita. Those who are specifically studying Bhagavad Vedas, there is so much of description about this heavenly planet, so much of description about Brahman, the kind of bliss one may get there and all. So people who definitely want to merge into Brahman, you may talk about so many Mayavadis, so many Brahmavadis, they talk about this philosophy of merging into something, and we'll talk about their final destination also in later stage. But somebody who wants to Brahman, that is going out of this material world, and very first principle for that is such a person should be celibate. That means he has absolutely zero sex desire. He has nothing to do for in this particular material world. So this particular getting attraction to opposite sex is actually considered one of the topmost governing principle. As you can see, so many births and deaths, particularly the birth process, it happens through this particular practices of sex. And this celibacy, that means getting mind completely out of such desire. It's one of the very basic minimum for people who want to follow this particular Ashtanga Yoga practices and enter or merge into Brahman at the time of death. And then there are other practices about attaining spiritual state through devotion and constant engagement into devotional activity. So later on, we will see that the goal which is attained by so much of arduous process of this Ashtanga Yoga, and even trying to meditate so much at the time of death and controlling mind and senses, remaining celibate lifetime, the result which is being obtained, the similar thing can be obtained with devotion as well. Now, we'll come to the about devotional process while discussing this particular journey of soul. So in the previous chapter also, Krishna touched upon this repeated birth and death. So what Krishna is talking about, as long as you can see these various universes which are created as Mahavishnu is breathing in and out, all these various universes are created from his bodily pores, and in each universe, Brahma is living for trillions of years, and when Mahavishnu breathes in, all these universes getting merged back in his body. We'll discuss this concept again and again while discussing this chapter. So while being in this universe, there are 14 planetary systems. So we have Svargaloka, then Janaloka, Tapoloka, Maharloka, Brahmaloka, all these higher planets. And then we have Atala, Vitala, Sutala, Talatala, Patala. There are various lower planetary systems. And there is in Vedic Cosmos session, we also discussed what kind of lifestyle is there on each of this planet, what kind of living entities stay there, how they migrate from one planetary system to another. But the common theme across all these planetary system is repeated birth and death. So Krishna talks about this material world as a place where this from highest planet in the material world down to the lowest, they are all places of misery. Dukkhalayam ashashvatam. Why? Because there is a repeated birth, and whatever one may obtain, it is never a permanent. It keeps on changing. So it's repeated birth and death. And Krishna says, but one who attains my abode, that is a depicted with the topmost part, the spiritual worlds. One who goes to the spiritual world, he gets a spiritual, very beautiful body with full of bliss and knowledge. And that's a perfection of life. He doesn't look forward for any more material experiences in this world. So Krishna is also saying the great souls or yogis who practiced and perfected their life in devotion, they never return to this particular temporary world which is full of miseries. Of course, one is able to give up the lower taste only when one is convinced and one has actually experienced higher taste. So people who have actually experienced higher taste, that is devotion to the Supreme Lord in the spiritual world, they have zero interest in coming back to this particular world. So material world in summary is a place of misery where there is a repeated birth and death, constant creation and destruction. We'll discuss about this more in the next slide. What is the frequency of this particular destruction and creation? But in the spiritual world, it's an eternal bliss. It's an infinitely eternal bliss. No more death and birth, because this spiritual world is the spiritual constitutional body, one which receives. This is a non-deteriorating body. So there is no question of the spiritual in spiritual world there is any kind of fear or disease or old age or all these problems that they do not exist, and that's a transcendental realm of manifestation. So we discussed in previous slide about this creation and destruction. So in this particular chapter, Krishna actually talks specifically about the time duration. And this entire Bhagavad Gita is explaining, convincing Arjuna to perform his duty and to perform on the higher consciousness, how to perform, what are the knowledge platform, on which platform one should perform his duty, what should be the intention while performing duty. So Krishna is giving everything in very short format in Bhagavad Gita, but in Bhagavatam, there another scripture which actually has 18,000 verses. So Bhagavad Gita has 700 verses, Bhagavatam has 18,000 verses. The fifth canto of Bhagavatam, it explains in very much detail about the entire details of this Vedic cosmos, its creation, the time of various duration and everything. So Krask here is, as we explained this, all these universes are coming from the Mahavishnu's body. In each universe, there are 14 planetary systems. And on the top planet, there is a Brahma. But then Krishna gives very interesting calculation here. So Krishna talks about this cosmic time, that is 1000 Mahayugas. So 1000 Mahayoga is actually, maybe let me just see if I can explain to you. Yeah. We'll come back to this slide, but just take a look at this, the time calculation below here. So the life of Brahma, each day is called as Kalpa. In each day there are Manvantaras. In each Manvantara there are 71 Divya Yuga. So in Divya Yuga, it's a cycle of Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapar Yuga, Kali Yuga. And Kali Yuga is 4,32,000 years, this particular duration. And then there is a Sandhakal between different yugas. So this twice then Kali Yuga is Dwapar Yuga, twice then Dwapar is Treta Yuga, twice then that is Satya Yuga. And like that, there are 1000, this one Divya Yuga is actually all these four yugas combined. So like that, there are 1000 Divya Yugas in one day of Brahma. And it comes to like 8.4 billion years in calculations. And what happens at the time, at the start of Brahma? He creates all the universes, everybody, depending on the kind of the stock, the desires, the stock of the karma they had acquired from past life, the desires they have acquired. They enter into various forms, animals, trees, demigods, living entities, humans, and or fishes, or various species. They enter on in all these various species and continue their life. It goes on till 8.4 billion years. In between, they may take so many births and days. They may go to higher planets. They may go to lower planets. At the end of Brahma's night, everything is wind up again. And how that winds up, all the details are there in the Bhagavatam, that the how many planets are actually submerged in water, what happens 400 years, there is a constant rain, then there is a scorching heat, and then literally the whole universe is getting roasted from within. All these details are there. So not just life and death of this but one particular body, but this entire universe on daily basis, that is on Brahma's daily basis, is actually getting created and annihilated. And then there is a Mahapralaya, the final Pralaya, where Mahavishnu breathes in. Then the entire Brahma's life, he has also lived for 100 years, and then his life is also over. That is 311 trillion years, 40 billion years. And then everything is sucked back into the Mahavishnu's body. So there is a concept of manifest where you and me are sitting right now. We are living in this body, we can understand each other. And there is an unmanifest state where we no more have these bodies. We do not even have subtle bodies. And we are just lying with our own stock of karma and our own stock of devotion. And we are just waiting when the next creation happens and where we'll come into being again. So again and again, Krishna writes here in the 8th chapter of 19th verse, when Brahma's day arrives, all living entities come into being, and with the arrival of Brahma's night, they are helplessly annihilated. We don't have a choice. Only beings who have perfected their life, who manage to get out of this material world by practicing these particular various yoga systems, and specifically Bhakti Yoga, though they are able to go to Brahman, they are able to go beyond the material world back into the spiritual world. They do not have to suffer again and again. And everybody else, they get just helplessly annihilated. And we can see when earthquake happens, when tsunamis happens, how much control we have over this material nature. So this entire material experience is actually arranged by this material manifestation, that is the arrangement of this nature, plus governing principle, that is the agency of these demigods with their energy. So uh, while getting this annihilated in this particular world, and then I mean, it's very traumatic experience for soul. Soul is eternal, he is having eternal life for, but for him to getting again and again this birth and death is, it's very, every time when death happens, literally you and me, actually we had gone through brilliance and trillions of time this experience of death, but whenever it comes, going to come again in this particular body at whatever point of time, in whatever means, again that none of us are actually comfortable. We actually have so many relationships, so many thought process, and we don't know what is going to happen. That unknown, what is going to lie ahead, that brings the maximum anxiety for anybody. But one who has perfected his life in devotional service and who definitely knows that I'm going back to God, I'm going to go out of this particular spiritual world, this material world, and back to the spiritual world with no more birth, no more death. Such a person is absolutely joyful. He's looking forward to this experience of death. So this Adhibhuta reality, as we discussed, the material manifestation plus Adidaiva reality. Adidaiva means this the system of various demigods. This gives a spiritual awakening experience that soul literally thinks that I'm done with this particular. After so many back and forth, if one comes to conclusion, if one is fortunate enough to get this knowledge, if one is fortunate enough to develop that faith and practice these principles in their daily life, and one gets that knowledge from within. Now it's most important that conviction we cannot give with some intellectual argument. If one is following this process genuinely, sincerely, he will get that faith from within. That is a spiritual awakening, and then one is on the final path of returning back to God. So the destination for such soul is a supreme. So that place from which having attained it one never returns, that is my supreme abode. So Krishna is again and again, he is actually kind of advertising that this spiritual world, there are no more such miseries, and when you come back, come back to the spiritual world, you do not even think coming back to this material world again. You do not have to go through different sets of mother, father, different relations, children, spouses, whatever it is. You have one permanent happy set back into the spiritual world. And then this Krishna says that to achieve such a state, to go back to this supreme destination, the important quality is that we have to develop this unalloyed devotion. So this devotional service, we cannot have so many material desires. Oh, let me have such a nice house with such a nice car and such a beautiful spouse and the very obedient kids and very brilliant kids, and then with all of this, then I mean, as per one's own karma, one will get this happiness or distress. So for, we are not desiring for miseries and we are not endeavoring for it, but still they come in our life without any plannings. So similarly, one should know the happiness which one deserve, it will also come without so much of planning. So rather than just worrying about happiness and distress in his life and what kind of state I'm planning to attend, whatever time and energy we have received, if we can somehow dovetail to understand this particular knowledge, to develop the uh, basic um, foundation with which we can actually practice these principles in our life, then we can actually start developing distress towards this material life. And that lower taste of material life, when it is gone, then our devotional becomes unalloyed. It is no more mixed with any material desires, it's unalloyed. And then if with that unalloyed devotion, one will be able to return back to the spiritual world. Now, at the end of this particular chapter, I think we are on second last slide, and Krishna talks of very important rules of death. But these rules of death, to start, I'm just giving you hint that they are about birth and death. So rules of death means if you want to go to any specific planet, or if you want to go to any specific species, then what all things one may need to do. So there are various advanced techniques. Now there are Ashtanga yoga techniques that we have to fix our prana. Prana means life force. So if somebody is, if you are doing some Kapalabhati or something, one may feel or the Kundalini Shakti or some specific prana is rising. So one has to rise it, not just to the various chakras. It needs to be rise at the eyebrows, the So fix the prana at the eyebrows, fix the mind in the heart, draw the breath to the head. That means absolute focus. The focus is the breathing techniques helps us for focus. So with the breathing techniques, bring the entire focus to the head. Chant Om and remember Krishna or wherever the destination one wants to go to. So when I was seeing this picture very first time, I was actually fascinated that this yogi must be practicing so difficult and austere life. I was actually observing small details from this picture. I even spotted this tiger, if you can see in the background behind. But rarely, actually, I noted very important factor that this yogi is actually from top of his head, his soul is actually exiting his body and going to specific planet. That is this picture is all about. So Krishna says that if somebody wants to go to Brahman, that is out of this material world, then there are specific rules to follow, of course. Then one has to leave his body in the daylight. One has to leave his body in the waxing fortnight when the moon is getting bigger and bigger, and that too when sun is traveling in the northern direction. So yogis actually wait for such kind of auspicious moments and then they leave their body for going out of the material world. Or if somebody is desiring to go to some other planet, moon planet, heavenly planets, whatever other planets, and enjoy the delights on that particular planet, then for within this particular universe, one has to leave his body in the waxing fortnight when the moon is becoming smaller and smaller and sun is traveling in the southern directions. And when at such as there are specific moments which are written in Vedas that if we can quit our manage to so the important factor is manage to quit our body. So following all these yogic processes and ready to quit the body and waiting for the specific moment, then we can decide which planet and how we want to travel. But fortunately, those who don't want to go to this process, Krishna is saying for devotees, even they are aware that there are these various timings and this and that, they are not bewildered. But for because for them, service to Krishna is the topmost priority. The timing, the place, the consciousness, the focus here and there, everything is secondary. Service to Krishna is the primary. So, coming to the conclusion of this particular chapter, Krishna says that, I mean, these people who have practiced the yoga and who are able to quit their body at specific time in their life, they are achieving different benefits. But the person who accepts the path of devotional service, and these 6 chapters are all about that. Next 10th, 11th, 12th chapter is more about that to understand the devotional service. One who is accepting the path of devotional service, they are not bereft of the results which are derived from studying the Vedas, intense study of Vedas, performing various sacrifices, undergoing lot of austerities and penances, giving heaps of charities of various precious things, pursuing philosophical and fruitive activities. So each of these things that gives very specific benefit. But by performing devotional service, he attains all of this. And at the end of life, he reaches to the supreme eternal abode. So Krishna is guaranteeing that he is giving all the knowledge, but again, he is giving this particular warranty that if you can take up this Krishna consciousness process, then you are not bereft of final results of any of these activities. And just to reiterate, these jnanis or these people who cultivate a lot of knowledge, they actually have this intellectual conviction, and through that intellectual conviction, they develop the attitude of surrender and they look forward to liberation. For dhyanis who have actually practiced this Ashtanga yoga process, what we discussed, they are able to control their mind where exactly they want to focus. With that mental absorption, they decide, okay, so with the knowledge they know Krishna is supreme, and with that mental absorption, if they are able to fix in devotion, they can still achieve the supreme destination. And for devotees, Ananya Bhakti, unalloyed exclusive devotional service. So not having any other desire of or any other longing to enjoy anything of this particular world, but knowing, developing this knowledge, studying these scriptures, understanding who am I, how this material world functions, what all things I'm supposed to control, how my senses are working, how am I not supposed to be attached to the result, what intention I should be having while performing my activities, who is Krishna, how is he dealing with his various devotees, what are his characteristics, and then knowing more about Krishna, his relationship with various devotees. So with all this knowledge, everything when we perform with so much of love and attention, that's what is about devotion. With that devotion, the devotee of Krishna, he can also attend to the same supreme abode. Thank you so much for your attention. This particular picture in this last slide is about this Govardhan. So people I had seen they do so many of them do the parikrama of this Govardhan, some of them do the Dandavat parikrama of this Govardhan. And anybody who is actually devoting their life for these activities, Krishna reveals the knowledge from within. We discussed about this concept. So even if somebody may not be reading all the Vedas, and somebody may not be even practicing so much of austerities, but if one is having devotion, the super soul from within, whatever is required for that soul to progress in spiritual life, that will be revealed from within. Thank you so much for your focus. And if you have any specific questions, please feel free to ask. So to give a quick summary of this chapter, if any of you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Otherwise, I'll just go through the quick summary of this particular chapter. So we discussed about the various concepts because Krishna in 7th chapter he talked about different things, a lot of new things for Arjuna. So he wanted to clarify his doubts about Adhyatma, Adibhuta, Adidaiva, Adiyajna, all that questions he asked, and Krishna gave very perfect answers for all these terminologies. Then Krishna starts speaking about the yajna of death, that about how what we remember at the time of death. So it's not just by lying on the couch and remembering something. It's about practicing the whole life and dedicating our life towards that particular purpose. And to the extent that we saw about meditational processes or the Ashtanga yoga processes, that one decides at what moment, in what state he wants to quit his body. So that's about the yajna of death, and whatever we remember at the time of death, what we are focused, what we are attracted throughout our life, that decides our next destination, the spaces, the planets, or in the spiritual world back to Godhead. We discussed about this focus of meditation, how people by chanting these various mantras and practicing celibacies, if they want to merge in Brahman, then how meditative they need to be practiced. By the way, this Brahman, the area between the spiritual world and material world, even if one goes to the Brahman, the problem with Brahman is there is no spiritual bliss. So one may not have negative experiences of this material world, but there are not so positive experience. There is no direct service to the Supreme Lord. We are not seeing the Krishna or enjoying or participating in his daily routine. So in this Brahman, it's a neutral platform. One is not having very negative experience, but one is not having very positive experience also. So whoever goes to Brahman may remain there for trillions and pentillions or so many years, but whenever they have desire to develop that relationship with the Lord, they have to practice devotional service only. Otherwise, just remaining in Brahman is actually a boring target of life. So we discussed about the focus of meditation. We discussed about journey of soul within this particular world and outside this world. Specifically, we talked about this world as a being repeated birth and death on various planets. And then we talked about how not just birth and death on in different spaces, the entire universe itself gets created and annihilated at the Brahma's on daily basis, as well as at the end of Brahma's life. We discussed about that as well. Then we discussed about how to attain the spiritual destination with the help of unalloyed devotion. Then we discussed about this intricate process about quitting this body in the daylight or night time, and then what time the sun's traveling northern direction, sun traveling southern direction. But this is